They didn't announce a boycott. They didn't protest. They just stopped coming. In 2024, Canadians made over 39 million trips to the U.S. for vacations, shopping, and weekend escapes. This year, that number is on track to drop by more than 70%. And the fallout is already visible, from empty hotel rooms in Florida to quiet shopping malls in Buffalo to border towns watching their lifeline vanish overnight. This isn't a warning. It's already happening. Canada, once America's most loyal tourism partner, is pulling back, quietly, relentlessly, and U.S. businesses are bleeding because of it. In this video, we'll look at how crucial Canadian tourism once was, why it's collapsing in 2025, and what it means for U.S. cities now facing economic shockwaves they didn't see coming. Because this isn't just about missed vacations. It's about trust, politics, and a quiet unraveling that could change cross-border travel for years to come. So before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story goes far deeper than most people realize. And the next chapter is already unfolding. For decades, Canada wasn't just America's neighbor. It was its biggest, most loyal tourism partner. While Americans often think of international travel in terms of Europe or Asia, the truth is this: no country sent more travelers to the U.S. than Canada. And it wasn't even close. But this wasn't just about numbers. It was about rhythm, trust, and routine. Canadians came frequently, for groceries, hockey games, outlet malls, weekend getaways, and family visits. It didn't feel like crossing a border. It felt like crossing the street. This quiet, dependable traffic became part of the invisible infrastructure of tourism in America. Especially in states like New York, Michigan, Florida, Arizona, and Washington, Canadian visitors weren't just important. They were the backbone. Hotels, gas stations, diners, and shopping centers timed their promotions around long weekends in Ontario and Quebec. Some towns, especially near Niagara Falls and the Vermont border, built their entire local economies on Canadian foot traffic. And because it was so steady, so reliable, no one ever thought it would stop. But in 2025, it did. And what's happening now isn't a slow fade. It's a sudden, seismic shift. Because the same people who once crossed over without thinking are now staying away, and the damage is just beginning. But this wasn't just a drop in traffic. It was a sudden, sharp disappearance. And by early 2025, the cracks weren't subtle anymore. They were everywhere. Coming into 2025, tourism officials expected a rebound. This was supposed to be the comeback year. But instead, the numbers collapsed. Canadian tourism to the U.S. has declined for 6 straight months, and the drops aren't small. In May, road travel was down a staggering 38% year over year. In June, the start of summer travel season, road trips were still down a brutal 33% compared to the same time last year. Air travel didn't fare much better. 22% fewer Canadians flew to the U.S. this June compared to June 2024. This marks 6 consecutive months of double-digit declines in both air and car travel. The so-called rebound never arrived, and now the silence is deafening. Airlines are cutting capacity. Tourism boards are quietly lowering projections, and cities that banked on a summer surge are watching it evaporate. Some airports have reported their lowest Canadian arrival numbers in over a decade. But here's what makes this different. Canadians didn't stop traveling. They just stopped choosing the United States. Mexico, the Caribbean, Europe, and Asia are all gaining ground, as Canadians spend the same money, just somewhere else. Travel executives have started calling it the Canada flyover effect, because Canadians aren't just hesitating, they're bypassing the U.S. entirely. And every month the pattern grows more obvious. But the question still lingers. Why? What changed so drastically and so fast? The answer is more political than most Americans realize. This pullback is being driven by something deeper, something political, emotional, and ongoing. It started with rhetoric. When President Trump returned to office, he reignited tensions almost immediately, calling Canada America's 51st state and threatening economic retaliation over digital taxes. That wasn't just talk, it sparked headlines. Polls showed a sharp rise in anti-U.S. sentiment. and things kept escalating. In July 2025, Trump publicly threatened a 35% tariff on Canadian goods, not over national security, but as a bullying tactic to force a new trade deal. To many Canadians, it confirmed what they already felt. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was deliberate. And at the border, things haven't improved either. Travelers continue to report being interrogated, phone searched, and even denied entry for vague or inconsistent reasons. Immigration lawyers still advise Canadians to travel clean, or not at all. And just this July, CBC reported that dozens of Canadians are still being detained by U.S. immigration, including one woman arrested and held over a decades-old border issue from the 1990s. For many, the message is clear. Crossing into the U.S. doesn't feel casual anymore. It feels risky. A recent survey found 60% of Canadians say U.S. politics make them less likely to visit. More than a third have already canceled trips. This isn't just a dip in traffic. It's a quiet rejection, one that's growing stronger with every new insult. And for those assuming it would pass, the next chapter shows just how costly that assumption might be. The message may have started in Canada, but now U.S. cities are paying the price. In places like Buffalo, Detroit, Burlington, and Niagara Falls, New York, the change is obvious. These towns once relied on Canadian foot traffic for everything from outlet malls to weekend hotel bookings. Now they're reporting some of the lowest cross-border tourism levels in over a decade. Retail chains are missing targets. Gas stations near the border are seeing double-digit drops in fuel sales. Hotels are offering steep discounts and still leaving rooms empty. Some businesses say they've lost 20% to 40% of their regular weekend revenue, and that number is growing. What used to be packed parking lots full of Ontario and Quebec plates are now half empty, and the pain isn't limited to the border. Florida, one of the top destinations for Canadian snowbirds, is feeling it too. Luxury hotels in Miami and Orlando have quietly trimmed staff. Restaurants near tourist hotspots are cutting hours. Theme park attendance is noticeably thinner during what should be peak season. For decades, Canada's tourism spending in the U.S. hovered around $20 billion a year. Now, with a 30 to 40% drop already underway, and more likely coming, that's billions disappearing from the U.S. economy in real time. And the worst part? This isn't a freak event, it's a trend. And unless something changes, the next chapter may be even harder to watch. Canadians are still packing their bags, they're just picking new destinations. According to Airbnb, Booking.com, and Hyatt, Canadian travelers are still active, but they're shifting their dollars elsewhere. Mexico has become the top alternative. All-inclusive resorts in Cancun and the Riviera Maya are seeing record bookings from Canadian tourists. Hyatt's CEO described it as a cascade away from U.S. resorts, a wave of travelers who once chose Florida or California, now opting for sun and safety south of the border. The Caribbean, France, Japan, and even Brazil are also gaining momentum. Canadians are still spending on flights, hotels, excursions, but that money is landing in other countries' economies. And these aren't short trips. They're intentional vacations, longer stays, more money spent, in destinations that feel safer, more welcoming, and less politically charged. Industry executives admit they're not even trying to redirect Canadians back to the U.S. They're just adapting. Because this isn't viewed as a blip anymore. It's being treated as a new normal. Canadian travel influencers and media are recommending other destinations by default. Friends are telling friends to avoid the U.S., not out of fear, but out of principle. And here's what makes it worse for the U.S. These aren't just one-off decisions. They're the beginning of new habits. And once travelers start building new habits, they don't usually come back. This collapse wasn't caused by a natural disaster. It was caused by decisions. The 35% tariff threats. The 51st state insults. The border interrogations, the humiliations, the silence when Canadians raised concerns. This wasn't a drift. It was a break. And while the damage is now being measured in billions, it started with something far simpler: disrespect. Canada has long been America's most loyal partner, economically, diplomatically, and yes, through tourism. But when loyalty is taken for granted, it doesn't just fade, it turns. Quietly, powerfully, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. Can this relationship be saved? Maybe. But it won't be easy. And it certainly won't be fixed with marketing campaigns or hotel discounts. If the U.S. wants to win Canadians back, it needs to change its tone. It needs to end the bullying. It needs to treat its closest neighbor like a partner, not a pawn. Because if this continues, if the tariffs rise, if the disrespect deepens, if the scrutiny worsens, then this isn't just a tourism issue anymore. It's a geopolitical fracture, and Canada may never come back. If you're Canadian, is the U.S. off your list this year? Was it the politics, the border treatment, the feeling that something's changed? Tell us where you're going instead, and why. Your story matters here. And if this hit a nerve, hit like and subscribe. Because this isn't just about travel anymore. It's about trust. It's about respect. And what happens when those things start to break? We're not just covering where people are going. We're tracking why they're leaving. This story isn't ending. It's accelerating.